Okay, we'll get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Datkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Na Vidhusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are almost crossing the middle of our 7th chapter. And we are on that aspect of 7th chapter, which is coming to more practical aspects. As I mentioned, always, chapter 7 is really where we understand who God is, who Ishvara is. And even in this aspect of Ishvara, we have talked about how Ishvara is basically, there are two aspects to Ishvara. One we call as the lower or the apara bhakti, and the higher, which is the para bhakti. It is sometimes the lower part of it is what we are familiar with, because the lower aspect, I guess, of Ishvara is what we see all around, right? So it is all this Pancha Mahabhutas which are in the form of this whole world, including this latest Chandrayaan, which was launched last week. So all this is part of the lower aspect of Ishvara, including our own individual mind, our intellect, and even this aham buddhi, the ego. All this is part of this Ishvara. But then for us, we have the ability to go beyond this Ishvara to that para Ishvara. And this higher nature is the one which actually is the essence of the whole world, the whole thing that we see. It is actually this life-giving force. So it is actually very important for us to understand this. So far we have seen, Krishna has indicated that ultimately it is this para aspect of Ishvara, which is the ultimate cause. And it is that cause which really pervades through everything. But we are not able to really see that Ishvara. And it is our journey where we are able to drop in our mind, not everywhere, in our mind, this aspect of this names and forms that we see, which is part of this lower aspect, and move forward. So the question always comes for us is, are we really seeking that higher Ishvara? Are we really seeking that Ishvara? I've just put it as a very simple one here. Do we seek God? Well, not really, right? We are not seeking that higher self because there is something which is preventing us from seeking that higher self. And it is this aspect of our own gunas. We talked about it last time, how each of the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, which is part of this Maya, which has this ability to actually overpower us. And because it overpowers us so much and gets us attracted to this names and forms of this lower Prakriti, so we are not able to really see that higher aspect of Ishvara. Okay, so let me break this up a little bit with, how, if at all we see God, we are like this person here, this person who's standing and is really asking, oh God, is that really you up there? So God immediately says, yes, my son, it is, I am right up there. So then, of course, we go to God with only things that we know well, right? So, we go to God for knowledge, we go to God for some other things. But here, here's this person asking God, so tell me, how long do you think is 1,000,000 years? In our own scriptures, we have this aspect of Brahmaji. For Brahmaji, how our 1 day of Brahmaji is equal to almost like, I don't remember exactly what the word is, but it's a huge number of days from a man's human perspective, right? So here, you see this man asking, how long is really 1,000,000 years for you, oh God? So the God says, to me, it's only a minute. That's all it is. So then the next question, more important to our heart. So God, how much is really $1,000,000? Okay. So God says, well, to me, it's just a penny. So guess what God replies then? So when he says, God, can I have a penny? So God says, wait a minute. So just a joke here, but just to show that how our asay for God is all this alpa, but here, if you take the same joke and make it more Vedantic, God is showing us patience. He says, if you want $1,000,000, so you better wait 1,000,000 years, in your own terminology. So this is how it is. Even if God comes in front of us, we may not be able to recognize God because these gunas, they tend to overpower us so much and they make us so deluded. Like he says, mohitam na abhijanati. I'm not able to separate this whole world that I'm seeing from God. But God is there everywhere. But I'm unable to see it because my mind is so full of all the time only these gunas, which is making me be that way. Geeta, any question? No? Okay. So then this question comes is, how do we remain sane despite all this insanity? This insanity which is going on outside is not happening totally everywhere, anywhere else, right? It is happening in our own mind. And this, again, this is, if you think about it, this mind which is based on all these thoughts, it is these thoughts which is making me seem that way. So how, then I have to slowly start thinking in my own mind that at the end of the day, this whole Maya which is happening, which is making me go on one day to something, to another day to something else, which is my own desires, it can happen only if there is a changeless substratum. Only when there is a changeless substratum can change really happen. And it is for us to go beyond this Maya or gunas, which is making me see that there is so much of change happening, which is making me think and making me want to go to different things. I need to go beyond that and recognize that there must be something which is non-Maya. So that part of it is where he's trying to get us into looking at it. So trying to remain sane in this insane world is where our sadhana is. So our sadhana is to go beyond this apara prakriti. So the question ultimately is it this changing world which is made of this apara prakriti, which is part of this apara prakriti, that is really giving me the happiness what I'm looking for? Or is it that changeless substratum, which is a para prakriti, is that giving me joy, fulfillment, and permanence? And this is something that our scriptures say that it is a para prakriti which is giving me fulfillment, but it is for us to meditate upon it, to do mananam upon it, and recognize that. It's not that we are not seeing. We actually are, we can see that every time when I'm going towards this joys of apara prakriti, that they are not long lasting. They're not permanent. It may give me fulfillment for just a minute or whatever, but later the same thing can give me also sorrow. That is the part that I need to think more about it. Like, for example, in the evening when I'm tired or something, I may just grab some candies or cookies or something because I'm tired. But the next day, you wake up saying, oh my God, why did I have this bunch of cookies or anything? Because now I have to suffer for it. Either my sugar level is going to go up or I have to burn out these calories. So if I look through each and every aspect of thing that is giving me joy, in that same joy, there is also sorrow built in, that sorrow may happen immediately, or that sorrow may happen after a long period of time. And it is for me to recognize how much am I attached to that thing. If I recognize that it is really temporary, then life is good. But if I recognize that that is where my permanency is there, that's where the sorrow also will come in. Because everything that gives me joy has to give me sorrow in some way or the other. It's really a fact. We have to recognize that aspect of it. So again, when I say joy and sorrow, keep in mind, what I'm saying is that this is from a temporariness point of view, not the permanent aspect of it. At the level of permanency, there is no such thing as joy, or there is no such thing as sorrow. Okay. So, yeah, go ahead, Geeta.
See, when we take gulab jamun, for example,
Correct.
We taste it, then we have joy. And as long as we realize that it is temporary, I mean, after 5 minutes, we say, okay, we ate it, it was nice, done. So is that called forgetting that, or is that, I'm trying to understand.
So when we have gulab jamun and I stay with that emotion of what that emotion is giving me, that is no problem. But what happens many times is, or after I stay with the emotion that it, I enjoyed it, that enjoyment was there. And after some time, I recognize that this is not a permanent joy, then that is fine. However, what happens is I enjoy it, and two things happen at that point. I enjoy it, and then I feel that, oh, I wish I could have more of this. because it gave me joy. That could be one thing, and we can talk about the consequence of that path. But the second aspect that can happen from that is, even as I'm having it, my mind immediately goes to something else, which is what happens typically these days, which is happening more and more as technology makes us more and more distracted. So even when I'm enjoying it, when I'm thinking of something else, what happens is I have not enjoyed what I'm going to have, which makes me go back to it more and more because I'm not enjoyed it. So there's a sense of incompleteness because of which I'm going. So both these two things happen for us these days in this impermanent world. Right?
Okay. I'm just thinking, what if we enjoy, eat, and then afterwards we forget?
That's fine. We enjoy it, completely be with the eating it, and then forget. That's perfectly all right. Because again, when we are living in this world of Maya, we have to go through all these 9 rasas, they say, right? 9 levels of enjoyment, or rasa is actually the essence of what,
Navarasa.
Navarasas, yes. Which is again associated with, our own Prakriti, correct?
Yeah. Sunitha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I understand. Like as Geeta said, once we had the gulab jamun and we are happy and forget about it, that's fine. But as you said, when I am having the gulab jamun, instead of enjoying that, if I think like, had I had if I have ice cream with that, it would have been more tasty or something. Right? That's what you are trying to say. So we are trying to bring something unsatisfaction here and something else also to that, right? I'm adding to my desire. Okay.
That is one aspect of it, where yes, you have not enjoyed gulab jamun for the essence of it. Now you're trying to bring in something more. But I'm trying to say that while I'm having gulab jamun, I see a cake next to it, and I don't enjoy this gulab jamun, but my mind is already occupied with the cake. On one hand, I'm having the gulab jamun because I have it in my hand. I feel that I shouldn't waste it or whatever. But then I have the cake. But then what happens is it leaves that residue of thought in our mind saying that, you know what, after 2 days or something, you think, Ganga really made those gulab jamuns with so much of love and everything. I didn't taste it. So there is a longing for it that remains in the mind. I'm just bringing Ganga's name here. Sorry, but because Ganga is usually known to make the gulab jamun. So
actually, we are not in the present, actually, right?
Exactly.
So whenever you are in the present moment, I'm trying to be in future or past kind of thing.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
So that's the problem with this apara prakriti. That's the idea that I want to bring in here. We are constantly looking for joys coming from the apara prakriti. I need to go to the para prakriti. Okay. So that is the idea where we are saying, so this is all because of Maya. So this Maya is the one which is keeping me grounded in samsara. Okay. That is the aspect of it. And because of this, I'm just unable to get out of it. Okay. It just makes me So Lord Krishna understands this issue that we're going through. So what does he do? He gives us a solution. Okay. He says it's a very, very simple solution. And he's very compassionate towards us because he knows that on one hand, it is my own mind which is being deluded by all these, mohitam. It is being deluded by all this stuff around me. And it is not able to focus on that aspect. He recognizes that aspect, but he also knows it's the mind that has created it. The mind itself has created this aspect of delusion. The mind is then is also being affected by this delusion. So by coming to Bhagavad Gita, by listening to all the lectures and everything, that's when you really recognize that at the end of the day, this mind is attracted to sense organs because it is a play of this sattvic, rajasic, tamas. But if this para prakriti is beyond that, that simple example, like for example, the ocean, you see all those waves. The waves are on this substratum, which is at the bottom. Because of a substratum, you find the waves are able to be there. But the waves and the substratum are different. They're not made of this. They are at the highest level, they're made of the same. But the waves are water. The substratum is mud, and this one, they're untouched. So the same way, Ishvara is beyond these gunas. The highest level of the para prakriti is beyond this. And I need to somehow penetrate through these gunas and go there. So how do I do it? So Krishna says the one and only solution for this is to develop bhakti. He says that is the only way. Here I have given you your reasons why it is happening, but I want to tell you that ultimately this bhakti is the only thing that will take you there. So 7th chapter being part of, that segment of 6 chapters here, it starts in this chapter from development of how that bhakti can be developed. What is the solution, how you can develop bhakti. And then ultimately in the 12th chapter, which is the most beautiful chapter of the bhakti part of, in terms of bhakti, he will give you so many pointers, so many different things. But here he starts off by saying that the reason you have to develop bhakti is because of this Maya. Maya is deluding you. So the only way you can do it is this bhakti. But then, he says, and naturally, of course, the question will be, what exactly is bhakti? And therefore, he begins his topic of bhakti in this aspect. He deals with various stages of bhakti, which is this 4 types of people we talked about last time. But then he first wants to point in this next shloka where he says that people don't turn to bhakti because, first of all, they're so attracted to this world of Maya, they don't have enough punyam, to go beyond. So that is where he says, Devi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante Maya Metham Tarantite. He says, even this Maya, which is actually nothing but it's mine only, but only those who take refuge in me alone can really cross this. So actually, I'm sorry, that shloka is coming up here where I cross this to 15. So he says, the people who are deluded by this Maya are these people. We discussed this before, but I'm just, for the sake of flow of the topic, I wanted to mention about the people who are so stuck by this Maya. And then he says, what is their, of course, you always have to say, what is the result of such people who are so attracted by Maya? They actually, they are asuram bhavam, they become really so kind of inhuman and they stay in that part area. So again, what it means is people are so attracted to the Maya part of it. They'll do anything to get what they want. Their ashraya, their substratum is actually in all these temporary things. So therefore, in Shloka 16, we saw this also last time about how Chaturbidha bhajante mam janaha sukritinaha arjuna artaha jignasu artharti jnani. These are the 4 people. And first, he talks about the artaha, people who are who go to God for something. These people are people who want to get away from sorrow. Okay. So because they want to get away from sorrow, they go to God and they are called these artaha. Then the second type of people are people who are actually going to God for knowledge. So in that joke, people, I had this, he asked this question, how much is one day for you, right? So what I'm saying is we go to God for knowledge also, and that is what he says is a jignasu. So in the first example, there are examples of, like Kunti, all of them, they are the kind of, they are the ones who are Artha, who, like Kunti always, the famous thing always is about how Kunti says that, that give me sorrow, because when you give me sorrow, oh Krishna, I will think about you, right? Jignasu is the kind of people who are looking for knowledge. And here we gave this example of Parikshit. And also, people, students, we worship Saraswati for knowledge. So it is that is the knowledge here we are talking about, from the lowest level to the highest level. I need knowledge of the things around me, chemistry, economics, all that, to all the way to getting to know God. Then, of course, next one we have is Artharthi, who are people who are going beyond the Purusharthas. They are trying to, we have Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. He's talked about that. And Artharthi are the people who are trying to rise even beyond that. So all these people you can see are people who recognize that there is somebody called God, and they pray to God in 4 different ways. And finally, we have the Jnani, who is the wise one. Wise one, a person who has realized ultimately that aspect of the para prakriti. So there is nothing other than God everywhere. So he sees God in everything. We give this example of the clay pot, right? So the clay pot, which is shapes and sizes and all that, such a person can actually look at the entire thing as mud. He's not dazzled by the forms or whatever. So just as an example here, as a kind of what should I say, of a ladder of rise of 4 stages of bhakti. See, we have the Artha Bhakti, Jignyasa, Artharthi, and then we have the Jnani Bhakti. So all 4 of them, it depends on, so it's a kind of an evolution, you may say. So even within an individual, this doesn't have to be necessarily 4 types of people, but we can also look at this as 4 stages. So initially we can start off as an Artha, and then if I'm at a stage where I have to, I really want God's help for something. So that's where I'm an Artha, because I need to get rid of this, my dukkha. So for dukkha nivritti, I go to Artha. And then the second part is where I'm then seeking knowledge. Once I have the knowledge, then I'm going at 1 step higher, where now I'm looking for better and better happiness. So when I say better and better happiness, is that no longer does the gulab jamun give me happiness, but gulab jamun is good. I can enjoy it, but the greater happiness for me is when I'm really trying to understand who I am. So that is Artharthi, where the person recognizes that the worldly things will not give him any more happiness, like security. All this is not enough. And such a person, climbs higher. And then finally at Artharthi, the person is, totally recognizes that ultimately it is nothing but that Ishvara who can give me security and happiness. And I am that, so such a person is a Jnani. So among all this, Krishna, we find, says that he prefers the Jnani, because the Jnani is always strong, he's very steadfast. No matter what kind of problems this Jnani goes through, the Jnani recognizes at the end of the day, these whatever problems that has come is only because of my previous Janma Papa I may have done. Papa means not necessarily like really sin as in killing somebody or whatever, but even saying something negative to somebody at some point can come back at some point and affect. So that is all the Papa. On the same lines, the same jnani, when somebody praises him or her, they recognize that this is all because of the punya I may have done. So it's, and the person recognizes I am beyond this. So such kind of people are these jnanis, and he says that I'm exceedingly dear to such a person, and such a person is also dear to me. So this part we talked about also. Then in shloka number 18, he wants to say that just because I have voted, Krishna feels that, okay, just because I voted for the jnani, and doesn't mean that the others are not good. So Krishna wants to reiterate saying that, but you know what, I love everybody. So he says, Udara sarva evaite jnani tvatmaiva me matam astita sahi yuktatma mam eva anuttamam gatim. So he says, noble indeed are all this, but the wise I deem to be the most special, because such a person is one who is established in me. So you see how he starts to slowly use the word me, He's trying to bring people closer and closer to him. And so he gives this aspect here. So then yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So Purusharthas are the ultimate, right? Or is there anything beyond that?
Yes. So Purushartha is Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, correct?
Yes.
So Moksha, of course, is the highest Purushartha. Now, even this Moksha, first, you start with Artha, right? Artha, which is more, going for wealth and fame and security and all this. Then, you try to lead a very purposeful life, which is this dharmic life. You're evolving within yourself. Dharma, then Artha, then, of course, Kama, desire. You're going beyond the desires. But Moksha is also something, as much as I'm trying to work towards moksha, idea is I have to recognize that I am that already. Okay, it's not as if I'm putting all this effort so that I become something else. Okay, I am that already, but I don't know this. So all the four Purusharthas are only, again, sadhanas for us. Well, sadhana is not the right word here, but it is basically a concept or something which I'm working beyond. So I have to go beyond Purusharthas to go to that stage.
Thanks.
Okay. Moksha also is, I'm evolving towards moksha. I'm getting to a state where only moksha is important for me. So that is also a stage. So these four can be called as 4 stages of evolution. Okay. So thus now we find that after Krishna has given what is the qualities of who a jnani is, then you find that Krishna, wants to also sort of give us this perspective that, guess what? There are very, very few people that really work towards this aspect of it. I mean, he kind of, admits this fact. And he says, Bahunam janmana mante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudevaha sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. He says it's extremely difficult to find this person because it takes a lot of births. So this dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which Anant, you brought it up, this being the different stages, we go through several births in order to go from the one stage to another for us to finally recognize that at the end of the day, Vasudeva, which is here he says Vasudeva, that everything ultimately is nothing this Vasudeva. This infinite world is nothing but that para prakriti. that infinite world is nothing but this consciousness, this Brahman. So for somebody to ultimately realize that aspect, okay, he's saying that there are very, very, very few people who really have reached that goal. And here too, when we look at these words, when I say reach, it doesn't mean that somebody is physically walking, Of course, we have all these sadhanas, which is there for us to evolve. But all those sadhanas make sense only when I have understood why I'm doing this. So when I have understood this philosophy, then the sadhanas makes more sense. So that's why he says, Bahunam Janmana Mante, at the end of many, many births, ultimately, you have somebody who is a jnani who comes to me. Comes to me means he's not walking physically, but he is actually has understood who this me is. And that me is nothing but Vasudeva, he says. Vasudeva, I have one beautiful slide on this, which explains what is Vasudeva. So he says, Janmanam, many, many births. So, so does it mean that, this jnani is a special qualification? Only few people can be jnanis? So Krishna is saying, no, that is not true. But such a person actually has gone through many births. So, which is why sometimes, in our own lifetime, sometimes we see some people who seem to be going much further ahead than others. Why is that? Is it that the teacher was very partial to such a person? When we are young, that's what we think, right? The teacher is very partial to the person who's sitting in the front bench, the back benchers. The teacher doesn't care. It's not the case at all. It's just that the student who sits in the front bench has gone through much more in the previous lives, which we are not able to recognize this. And such a person really works very hard towards perfection. So such a person is, Krishna recognizes that. So he says, such a person is who I recognize. And then Vasudeva Sarvam, such a person recognizes that he is willing to give up everything else only to recognize that everything is nothing but Krishna. So that is why Vasudeva Sarvam, he recognizes that. And it is Su Durlabha, which is very, very, Su means extremely difficult. It is just a prefix to show, to bring about the, the difficulty, the great difficulty. Su Durlabha, it's very, very rare to find such a person. So here, Vasudeva Sarvam, basically to indicate that ultimately this entire world is nothing but Vasudeva. Everything. So here, of course, it refers to Krishna, who is the son of Vasudeva. So Vasudeva Sarvam actually doesn't mean that, ultimately that Krishna is everything, but he's trying to show beyond that. It basically means the infinite part of it, not the finite Krishna, but the infinitude is what ultimately everything is. Ultimately, everything is nothing but that Narayana, if you want to say, that Brahman, if you want to say, ultimately is that Brahmarpanam. When we say Brahmarpanam, Brahmas, Brahma Havihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, ultimately it is nothing but that Krishna. So to find a person who recognizes that way is very hard, and therefore that is the reason Krishna is saying that kind of devotee is the most special for me. So we are now coming to this portion where we are going to be talking about what about other gods? Is really Krishna the only one who is the highest? What about the Devis? What about the Sarpa? We have a temple here for the snake god. what about all this aspect of it? So that is where we are now introduced to, from almost shlokas 20 to 26, he's first going to talk about the aspect of God with form. So that bhakti, which is, we call that is sakama bhakti. Sakama bhakti means with a desire, okay? With that kind of a desire, when somebody approaches God, bhakti itself is basically where I am surrendering to God, and this can be for different reasons. So from 20 to 26, we'll see about approach to those deities where I approach with desire. And then from 27 to 30 shlokas, you will see where he talks about that parab bhakti, which is absolutely that surrender where there is no expectations whatsoever. So this is also because 7 chapters all about introduction to God, So you will see that, in this section where we are coming to this other deities, a lot of our doubts can also get clarified as to why do we pray to the other gods? Is there any special God? Is my special God out of realm of all this? No, that is not the case, because you can literally divide these deities into three categories. Okay, so we have certain deities who are recognized in the sense, there are like about as part of this whole cosmos which we live in, there are about 33 of the deities because of whom this world is running very well. Just like in a company, you have a CFO who takes care of finance, you have a CEO who's overall administrator, and then you have a CTO who takes care of this technology aspect of it. So you have all these functional heads, right? So too, in order for this entire cosmos to be running, there are about 33 of these deities. They are like this Agni Devata, Vayu Devata, Varuna Devata, the rain god, the fire god, the air god. All these gods are necessary for us to keep the world running. Like, for example, when I do pranayama, right? Pranayama is taking in my breath and taking out. So Vayu, the god who's responsible, the deity who's responsible for air, I pray to that God so that my pranas are moving very well in my body. Because if the pranas are not moving well, there is, it's going to affect my digestion. It's going to affect so many different aspects in my body, right? So that is one type of deities we are talking about. The second type of deity is the one who is in the service of this devata. So they are, you would say, a little lower kind of deities, and they really don't have any power to give us any spiritual direction or anything like that. And these are people who are specific to my family, or like, the Kula Devatas. We call these are the Kula Devatas to whom I pray. And these deities are somebody who takes care of my family, So these are the Kula Devatas. You go to, like, for example, my father goes all the way to a place near Tuticorin, where there is one particular temple. Every year, they will go there because that's the Kula Devam for us. So that is. Then the third kind of deity, they are actually not really, we would call deity in the sense of somebody whom we are praying to for good things, but they are the deities who are really not divine at all, but they have connections to asuric powers. So they may be Rakshasas or Asuras who hold great power, but they have negative qualities. And one may ask, why would we, pray to such a god, right? But then we do have examples from our literature, like, for example, Hiranyakashipu, right? Prahlada's father. He prayed to such a god to give him demonical power. so that he can destroy the world, right? Ravana, for example. So there are those aspects. So our, I guess, Hindu religion is very compassionate towards all kinds of people. Whatever you want, there is an aspect to it. So that is what he's trying to say, that, so these deities are the ones, which is very, he's talking about them. So, but then these deities, I mean, who would really pray to them, right? This is again dependent upon our need, so the attitude of a devotee should be, where if the devotee decides that, I need only this limited power, so there is a smaller deity for you. Okay, that is what he's trying to say. So all the way from an absolutely negative aspect of power that you need by this praying to this demonical deity, to something which is very limited. So when we talked about the 4 bhaktas, where I'm going to God only for taking away my sorrow, that is one limitation, which of course, if I'm going through something, I would obviously pray to God for that purpose. To something where I want something good, where maybe I need something fame, and even to helping out the whole world, I go to God for it. So it depends upon this attitude with which I'm approaching God. Okay. So that is one aspect of it. But the second aspect of this deity is where we're not going to this deity like the jnani is. Jnani is somebody who goes beyond, he's totally fulfilled, there is nothing more to ask. So depending upon my need, these deities are there to fulfill my wishes. So that is who a deity is. A deity is one who grants the devotee's request. Okay. But there is no consideration of any like spiritual development or anything. It's just purely materialistic reasons why we have the deity there. And there is no consideration at all about, like I said, spiritual development or this deity's connection to the Supreme Brahman. There is no connection to that. Only thing is this deity is there to help that devotee's materialistic request, so that the person is very in a much calmer state. Then let us just sort of clarify, because we've been talking about who is me, what does Krishna mean by who is me? Okay. So this me is ultimately, we can look at that ultimate para-prakriti or ultimate Brahman himself. So here Krishna is talking to us like, he is the avatar of that, he's a form of Brahman. And even in the form of Brahman, he is actually in one of the avatars in that form which he has taken, right? Saguna. He's taken, he's a Saguna Brahman, and the Saguna Brahman in the form of Krishna. So whenever he says me, he's actually referring to his infinite nature. Okay, so Krishna is referring to his infinite nature, but what we see in front of us is that ultimate a manifestation, you can say, or the form of that Brahman. So this need not necessarily be just Lord Krishna. It can be, Lord Shiva, it can be Rama, it can be Ganesha, anybody. But if I can actually see that when I pray to these gods, I'm actually praying to that ultimate Brahman. That is the part that he's asking us to do, is that when I reach a certain stage where I'm able to give up all my desires and I'm able to see that same God as a person who is beyond all the name and form, that is the aspect he's coming to. So we talked about the devotees, why do they go there? And what is the attitude? So the reason why such devotees will seek out these deities? Or let me ask you this question. Why would these deities then seek out these lower gods? In your own
For the
mind,
materialistic reasons?
for materialistic reasons, true. But can we elaborate, can we think a little more on why does that materialistic desire come to me?
It's like that's all they want, and then they don't think beyond that. And then to get the desires and the power. So that's all, they that's called tamasic or rajasic nature. So that's the reason for that.
That is one aspect of it. But again, the question comes is, why would they go to those materialistic desires, those tamasic desires? I guess one answer could be is because I don't know anything beyond that. Correct?
They think that's the ultimate for them.
Exactly. That's all that I know. I mean, like, for example, how would I know there is something called, I'm just going to use an extreme example. I truly did not know, I did not know there was a car called Maybach, right? Maybach is probably the most expensive car in the world or something like that. I never knew that. Until, I'm not saying that my neighbor has it, but ultimately, maybe I would have seen my neighbor drive that Maybach. And I would say, oh, you know what, now I want that, So we keep on looking for things based on what I know, and when I come to know of something, then immediately what happens, there is one sense of incompleteness. I feel that if I don't have that Maybach, then I'm not going to be happy. That Maybach is going to complete everything what I wanted, So this is one reason why we have people continuously looking for something or the other, because my desires will never ever end. It's like that our box of tissues, we take one tissue or the other tissue is just waiting in line to be taken out. Or if you go to Disney World, I sit in one car, immediately the next car is coming out, there's always these things which is coming out. It's up to me ultimately to put a stop. But the stop doesn't happen naturally because my mind is always looking for something higher. And the higher part of it is ultimately this infinitude. So long as I'm looking for finite things in the world, these finite things are temporary. They will not stay all the time. I have to recognize that aspect of it. It's very logical, actually. Nobody needs to tell me this. But if I don't spend the time to think about it and to really reflect upon it, I will always be looking only at finite things. And the finite things will always give me the sense of incompleteness. And that incompleteness will keep me grounded in this world and will make me pray only to the lower deities. Because those lower deities will, and this lower deities, they're very compassionate. It's not that they will say, no, don't come to me or anything. They will say, okay, this is what you want, I will give you this. But then what happens? I just keep on being low at the lower level. I need to rise to a higher level. Only when I myself recognize. So that's why God has given us that intellect also, which will help me think that, guess what? How long are you going to be in the same world? And I think our Mahatmas and all have used a lot of great examples. They say, like the pig, which just stays in that muddy water all the time. Do you want to be also the same thing? If you're going to be in this world, at the end of the day, what is that? This example of Guruji's, when you're in a rat race, you are still only a rat. Okay, you have to get out of the rat race if you want to be something different. So this is why, these shlokas are so beautiful, because it exposes us even among deities, the different levels of deities who are there, and who do I need to pray for. So these deities are all there for us, actually. In fact, they're so compassionate. Like I said, they are there to help us achieve our own goals, but we have to decide what goal I want to pursue. When that is very clear, then accordingly that deity is there in front of me to help me achieve that also. So it's so beautiful. I think Bhagavad Gita just gives you the practicality of devotion also here. So in shloka, yeah, go ahead, Anand.
Yes, it says like manayeva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshe. So these are the two reasons, being human. And unless there's a discrimination comes, then that's towards the bandhas only.
Correct, exactly. So mind itself is the problem. Mind itself is our friend. Mind itself is our enemy also. So this is why you find that a lot of people actually want only these material things. Many people really don't want this moksha. So this is why Krishna is saying that, Arjuna, now you know why I love the Jnani, because the Jnani doesn't want any of this material things. He wants only me. He wants me in my infinite form. That is why Jnani is very, very important to me. He says this. So in this shloka here, he's saying about this aspect. Kamaistair krita jnanaha prapadyantenya devataha tam niyamamasthaya prakritya niyata swaya. So he's trying to say here about, after explaining this 4 types of devotees, and also explaining how people have different kinds of desires, and depending upon the desire, there are many different gods, all the way from, if you look at, maybe in my next week, I can put this evolution of the gods also, from infinite Brahman, then you have the finite Brahman, Saguna Brahman, in the form of all these 33 deities who are taking care of the function of the cosmos. Then we have the Kula Devatas and everyone. He's saying, whose wisdom is looted away by desire, they approach any of the other gods, following this or that right, led by their own nature. What Anand just said, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha moksha yogo. Our own desires, they create that bandham, and that bandham is nothing but this desires which is causing that, and therefore we go to these different gods. So, they're all there for a good reason. They're there to help us only. Now we cannot blame the gods, saying that, it's like, a child going to the mother and saying, Mom, you're the one who gave me this breakfast in the morning, and that is why I felt sleepy in the class. I cannot, we can't blame the mother for that, right? So that same thing, he's saying, Kamaihi, our own desires lead us to those gods. And in the process, our own knowledge, our own ultimate knowledge, what we supposed to be going to, that gets diluted. Tam niyamam asthaya. And then we do all the rituals based on these. We do not recognize the ultimate power. So then in shloka, we'll do this one shloka also, because so far, so this shloka, actually the next one gives you a little bit of hope for such devotees. And he says that even if you worship a finite deity with a finite goal, Ishvara will definitely make sure that our finite goals are rewarded. So there is, in our religion, there's nothing like, there's nothing wrong in asking for it. one needs to, whatever you want to ask for it, but then also try to grow. That is what he's trying to say. So he says, yo yo yam yam tanum bhaktaha, yo yo yam yam tanum bhaktaha, shraddhayarchitum ichhati, shraddhayarchitum ichhati, tasya tasyachalam shraddham, tasya tasyachalam shraddham, tameva vidatamyaham, tameva vidatamyaham. So he says, whoever, again, our Hindu religion is so compassionate. He says, whatever form any devotee desires to worship, accordingly, I will make sure that that person is satisfied. So, whoever, whichever form the devotee is shraddhaya, architum. Archa means to worship. So whoever he faithfully worships, those desires, I will definitely fulfill that. So basically, the Lord is measured by the desires. He makes us abandon not by the desires which he fulfills. So he wants us to hold on to that shraddha, okay, by which we fulfill our desires, but direct that shraddha to higher goals. That's his aspect here. So ultimately, that is where, so we did Shloka 21 and 22 today. Next week, we will continue with further on in the same aspect of the devotees. But think in your own mind, maybe for next week, if you have any questions on this whole aspect of bhakti part of it, because sometimes this bhakti can be misunderstood. The bhakti can be for a desire, can be desireless, also is bhakti. So we'll start with the bhakti topic next week. Sarve bhavantu sukinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.